So, as per usual, please put down any sharp objects. Don't get too close to the microphone. We don't want to spread any of those diseases. So we're on Parshas Mishpatim, and there's a mind-boggling concept right at the very beginning that is very strange. If you want to look it up, it's in chapter 21, verse 15. It says like this, if you have it in front of you. Somebody who hits his father or his mother shall die. No messing around here.
I'm in agreement with this one.
Okay, good. Good. But what's strange is the next mitzvah, the next pasuk. The ganov ish umachfor, somebody who kidnaps somebody, and he's found in his hand, he also should die.
What's the problem?
What's the problem? Exactly. The problem is the next pasuk. Somebody who curses his parents, they shall die too. Right? So what's the problem?
One assumes that curses aren't such a big problem.
What's that?
One assumes that curses aren't such a big problem.
And the Torah is telling you otherwise. Is that what you mean?
That's what it seems to be. Yes, that's the area we seem to be moving towards.
That's good. The problem though is what is kidnapping doing in the middle?
Oh, you mean they should have just said, one who strikes his father or mother shall surely be put to death. One who curses his father or mother shall surely be put to death.
That's it.
So you're wondering why they have something in between.
What exactly?
But you could say the same thing for all the verses, because all the verses are talking about just general information, and then they stick this thing specifically about father and mother, go back to general, and then stick this thing about father and mother, and then go back to general again.
That's true in general, but it doesn't break up the subject. It'll keep on the subject until it's finished the subject. That's the general. That's usually how it goes. I'm not the only one who noticed this. Rashi noticed it. The Ibn Ezra notices it. There's a few that Rav Sadia Gaon noticed it. There's a few different reasons that are given for this problem, right? Now you should know. I mean, the Rashi says that this is the source of an argument in the Gemara, so it goes way, way back. But we should know that it's very interesting. The Art Scroll brings down that this is a repetition of the argument of the concept that's in the Ten Commandments, because the Ten Commandments also has kidnapping in it.
Okay.
Right, where it says don't steal, Rashi comes along and says it doesn't mean don't steal per se. It means don't kidnap, don't steal a person.
Okay.
Right? And that is also bookended before the mitzvah before that is don't murder, and the mitzvah after it, the Ten Commandments before it is don't murder, and the one after is don't bear false witness. Now, right, you should be able to see the parallels over here. Don't worry, it took me a while to figure it out. A lot longer than I'm giving you. so it makes me look good that I was spending a few days on this one, right? the comparison, we don't have a few days. I don't think my subscription to the StreamYard would last that long. Actually, I think we do have 24 hours. I can actually stay online 24 hours, I think, on this my subscription here. But anyway, the comparison is that in the Ten Commandments, the mitzvah before is an action, and the mitzvah after it is a verb, is a speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing going on here. Hitting your parents and then cursing them. You see, it's the same sort of paradigm going on.
Mm-hmm. So what are you saying? That it goes from the hands and feet kind of body type of actions to a more a less physical, but still in the physical realm of speech.
Right, goes from action to speech, and in the middle is kidnapping. So Rashi is sort of implies for us that the reason that it breaks it up, he says it's a Gemara, the reason it breaks it up is to make sure you notice this distinction. It's to point out this distinction.
Because Hashem wants us to notice something here, and that's the reason why it looks this way.
Exactly.
I see.
Right? What's the thing to notice? I would have thought that the cursing wasn't as bad as the hitting. And the Torah comes along and says, no.
Actually, sometimes words are like much, much worse because the bruises can eventually heal.
Right.
But the words can stay with you forever, and it can actually change the way you think and your whole life.
That's it. Exactly. Very good. Right. So the punishment there are 4 death penalties in the Torah. The punishment for striking your parents and for kidnapping is strangulation. I'm not going to go into details of how they do it, but nevertheless, that's the punishment. The punishment for cursing your parents is stoning, which is the worst of all the 4 death penalties. In other words, it is used to indicate the more heinous crime.
Good.
Now, why is that though? That's our question for today.
Because, like we said, words can do a lot more damage sometimes than physical actions.
That's true.
Just think about it. Even concepts, which again are relayed with words, can create massive damage. Think about all the children that have been manipulated with stupid ideas of gender ideology, whose lives are completely messed up. They were vulnerable. They were mentally abused, you can say, with words. And now their lives are horrible.
Right. That's true, right? That's a very good point. So words more than action, what I would like to say is words more than action indicates what you really think. In other words, you might hit somebody out of pressure, but you wouldn't I hate to use the expression, but you wouldn't curse them unless you're really upset with them. It can't, as with Purim coming up, the famous Gemara that says, "Niknes yayin," the wine goes in and the secrets come out. Right? What you really think is really you don't curse your parents or curse anybody that you don't have some sort of resentment to. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm.
So Niknes yayin, you're saying that it brings out a person's inner feelings?
Brings out a person's inner feelings, exactly. Right? So if you curse your parents, it's because deep down, you only curse them. In other words, if you have something you truly do love, whatever it is in life you truly do love, right? You love fish. You're not going to curse fish no matter how bad it gets. Because there's nothing in there. Curse is bringing out, you see this with October 7th. People, I came from a conference and people say the most silly things. So Jews tend to think that the Arab world, or the anti-Semitic world, I should say, which is somewhat synonymous but not exactly, was waiting for October 7th. It's not true. It's we just can't see it. That there's anti-Semitism was just lying there waiting for something to trigger it, and October the 7th brought it out. I was just at this conference and they're talking about anti-Semitism. So they're talking about we need to have a marketing campaign to counter the anti-Semites, because their messaging is so much better than ours. It's so silly. Like there's probably no single subject in the world that has more positive press on it than the Holocaust. More Hollywood than any other single subject. Maybe close the Second World War. Right? But definitely not the last 20 years. Okay, there have been quite a few more. I should take that back. Okay, the Second World War is number one. Yeah, but that did wipe out, I forget the numbers now, but wiped out a lot of people. It had some serious impact on the world. So you have the Second World War. After that, the Holocaust. The Holocaust had more, like, think about Schindler's List. You think about the museums around the world. You think about all the different things. There's more propaganda being distributed to engender sympathy for the Jews in the form of the Holocaust than any other single event. And yet what?
And yet there's still so much anti-Semitism.
Right. So thinking, it's like, we use it to an example of evil people, but it's a very good example. The Midrash says that when the plague of the frogs, it wasn't that there was lots of frogs. It started out as one big giant frog, and the Egyptians hit it, and it turned into two. So they hit it again, and it turned into four. So it kept multiplying. So you think, like, don't be an idiot. Stop hitting it. Yeah, the first rule of holes. You've heard of this one? Right? Stop digging. And when you're in trouble, stop digging. So where was I? So the Jews, the October 7th happens, and all this anti-Semitism comes out. So therefore, what? Stop telling people about things like October 7th.
Right? Yeah, it would make more sense if we did what we were talking about before when we talked about Vayishlach, which is, be in their face about who we are instead. Yes, people, we are the chosen folks. Get over it.
Right. That's an interesting way of dealing with it. But nevertheless, getting back, how do we get onto this? Oh, well, so what you say is really underneath, even at a time of pressure. The Talmud says, I'm gonna butcher it now. The Talmud says all the different crimes that people struggle with, stealing, all different kinds of crimes, and some people. A lot of people, it goes. Some people commit these kind of crimes. A lot of people get these kind of. I'm paraphrasing now, but he says everybody is over avek lashon hara. Everybody.
Wait, what does that mean?
The dust of lashon hara.
No, you mean that everybody does that? Is that what?
Yeah, everybody.
Oh. So some people have this issue. Some people have this issue, but everybody has.
Everybody's over lashon hara.
Okay.
Because it calls it avek lashon hara. It means it's not like, oh, did you see Joe? He's so ugly, right? They're not saying things like that. What's avek lashon hara? So you see, right? You're at a party, and you see somebody that you haven't seen in a long time. You go on to say, "Hi, Joe. How you doing?" Right? That's avik lashon hara. That's the dust of lashon hara.
Just for going up and saying hello?
Yeah.
Why?
Because after him walks in your cousin, and you go to him and go, "Oh, Michael, Oh, it's so nice to see you. Come sit down. Oh, it's been such a long time. Right, you follow? So everybody gets in there. Oh, you don't like Joe.
Wow. That's
Exactly. You know? In other words, the Mesilas Yesharim points this out. That what you really think about people, you see, it's a wonderful thing that we've worked on this for the last 30 years or so. It's been a big real push in the world to deal with Lashon Hara, and that's phenomenal. But what we're missing, not that we shouldn't have done what we did, that's a phenomenal thing, but what is missing from the whole thing is that if you don't love people, that's why it says everybody is over avec Lashon Hara, because if you don't love people, you are going to be saying nasty things about people. There's no such thing as holding it in, or biting your tongue, or being diplomatic, or saying nice things. We focus on it, and we should. I'm not saying that that's not. We should just go another step in, which is you have to love people, because if you don't love people, everybody knows you don't like him. What did he say? What do you mean? I didn't say anything. I know you didn't say anything. But it's very clear to everybody, him you don't like so much, or her you don't like so much.
so interesting what you're saying.
What does Lashon Hara? What was the connection again?
Because what you really think comes out. Cursing your parents. That's why cursing your parents gets a higher punishment than hitting your parents. Because hitting is just, you had a hard day, your stock's in the toilet, the rent's due in 3 days' time, there's no money in the bank account, you lost your job, you got a massive headache, you're coming down with a cold, your car got a flat tire, you got a speeding ticket on the way, right? And you walk in the door and you let loose.
You explode.
You explode. It's not your parents per se, it's anybody.
It's that last thing that just
Right. But you don't say something that's hitting, that's physical. But you don't say something that does not have an underlying issue. So no matter how bad a day you are, you're not going to say, "Oh, take all my money and run with it." Here's my PIN number of my bank account. Right? What you really love, that you're not going to curse. And what you don't really love, that you will. Making sense?
it does, but now it's causing me some internal because
Exactly.
I've been annoyed with my kids sometimes, and I'll say something that I don't mean, and then I'll feel bad, and I'll be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
Yeah.
So what's that then?
There is. We have some, we have some internal issues with even our kids. There's still, I'll tell you an interesting story. I just saw this from Rabbi Weinberger of Eish Kodesh. It's got this beautiful video. If you can remind me afterwards, I'll send you the video. It's phenomenal. And he says when he was a young man, he was in yeshiva, and he called his father. His father ran a dry cleaning store in Manhattan somewhere. And his mother picked it up and said, what's the matter? It's the middle of the day. So he said, I want to speak to Dad. So his mother said, it's the middle of the day. The store's packed. This is not a good time. He says, I'm so sorry. But his father found out that he was on the phone and picked up the phone. And said, what's the matter? And he was struggling with something or other. His father gave him all the time he needed. And that was it, right? And I messed up the story. So he called his father. Father picked up, and then his mother said to him afterwards, you called in the middle of the day. Dad picked up the phone. When he heard you on the phone, picked up the phone, he closed the store and kicked everybody out the store.
Wow. That's love.
So when Moshe found out what his father had done, he felt terrible. So he called up his father and said, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize, it was in the middle of I didn't realize you were busy and you would do that." So his father said, "No, you're making a big mistake. Everything I do is only for you."
Ooh.
That's how he became Rav Moshe Weinberger. Right? I have a very similar story. I had an older sister who died before I was born. This is what I credit for my becoming frum. I had an older sister. So my father, I never met her. She died before I was born. So my father, I was giving a class once in Los Angeles about why bad things happen to good people. And my father heard it. He came to the class and he said to me, "So why did my daughter have to die?" He'd been carrying this with him for 30 years. So, I said, "Listen, I don't know. But I can tell you that you raised us differently than you would have without that." How do I know? Because my father has 7 brothers and sisters. He's one of 8. And amongst all my cousins, they're all gone. Not from, married out, some never married. They're all a disaster. My father when they would get together with all the siblings, they would all get together and they hated him. I mean, not really hated him, but he was very annoying because they would pull out all the pictures of the grandchildren. It was 1 or 2, maybe 4 if they were lucky. And when did they see them? Never. My father, Baruch Hashem, had 14 grandchildren and plus great-grandchildren. And not only that, but they all loved him. And my father, at the end, the last 10 years or so, maybe more of his life, he would say to me on a constant basis, "I don't know what I did to deserve such a life." Like, money to him wasn't anything. It was like, he liked money, he liked the comforts of life, but you can't compare it to grandchildren. It's nothing to talk about. So what did he do? Because his children were everything. So you can't fake that.
So you're saying because he lost the first child, the way he looked at each subsequent child was so much more different than if he hadn't.
That's right. You see, people take their children for granted until they're not for granted. Rav Nach always used to tell the story about someone he knew who, he had family and everything. He lives in America, and they would never get together. So he wrote him a letter, says, "I'm having a party. I don't know exactly what it was." He says, "If you're not going to come, don't come to my funeral." Like, everyone gets together, the funeral, and what did everyone say at the funeral? We never see each other. Yeah, because everyone's busy. I understand that. We all got our priorities, right? But when your siblings go or cousins go, or whatever happens, right, you're going to miss them because those are the only people these are the people that really mean something in your life. So do something about it when they're alive, not when they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's phenomenal, mind-boggling idea number 1. Mind-boggling idea number 2 is chapter 22, verse 29. Now, this is a very strange mitzvah. Another very strange mitzvah. Because it says, if you want, let's say you want to have lamb roast for dinner tomorrow night, right? So you go to your local farmer, lots of them in New Jersey, and you go and you say, "I'd like a lamb." He says, "Oh, I just had a sheep that gave birth to a lamb just the other day," right? Young lambs are really yummy, right? You don't want to get the old ones, tough.
They're not as tender. That's true.
Right. It's an expression in England. England is built on lamb and wool, right? That was the Industrial Revolution, right? So lambs were very important in the House of Lords. There's the seats I forget what it's called, but the seats are made with wool in them to remind them. It's either the House of Lords or the House of Commons. I don't remember now. To remind them what the industry, the backbone of England's all about. Right, that was in the good old days. So anyway, so you go to the local farmer and you say, I'd like some lamb. He says, we just gave birth to twins, right? Oh, you go, that's fantastic. I can use one for dinner and one for a korban. Right? I'll bring the other one as a sacrifice in the temple.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't do that. The one you're going to eat, that's fine, right? But the one that's going to be a korban, that has to stay with its mother for at least 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot take that, right? I think I might have told you the story of when I was a young yeshiva bacher. We went it was after Pesach, during Pesach, we went to a milk farm. And here, all the cows are just given, a lot of cows are given birth to little calves. They're very cute little things, but what was wrong is that the kibbutzniks, they were holding these little baby calves in their arms. They're walking around with baby bottles in their mouths. So we said to them, like, what you're getting the milk from the cow, putting it in a bottle, and sticking. Those nature movies that I saw, right? The calves suckle from the mother. Like that's like the natural thing to do. Why are you doing it like this? And he said, you can't do that. This is a dairy farm, and if you do that, the mother will produce only as much milk as the calf suckles.
Mm-hmm.
So as the calf weans away, the mother produces less milk. So what do? They take away the calf at birth. Right? So he said, why you do it at birth? Why don't you let the calf stay with the mother for a few days? How long?
7 days.
7 days. So they said, we tried that. You know what happens when you take away the calf from the mother after a few days? One of them cries. Which one?
The mommy.
The mommy. Why the mommy?
Because she gets
the calf.
She gets uncomfortable and she wants to feed her child.
No, because more than the calf wants to take, the mother needs to give. Right? This is the source for the question, what is the worst thing your children can ever say to you your entire life?
I don't need you anymore.
That's it. You got it.
I don't think my kids need me anymore.
They do. They do. But we need them more than they need us. Right? So you see, the Almighty the world was built on chesed. What's chesed? Chesed is I want to give more than you want to take.
I thought true chesed is giving what is needed to the other person, not what you want to give.
That's true, but it's nevertheless, right? You see, it's a very interesting thing. The rabbis say that the Torah began with chesed and ends in chesed. It ends in chesed with the death of Moshe. God buries Moshe. And how does it begin?
It begins with giving clothes to Adam and Chava.
Giving clothes to Adam and Chava, right? So Rabbi Plant says, why did it start with creation?
Why not?
What do you mean, why not?
Why not?
Which is greater, clothing or building a universe? DNA.
I would think building the universe is very important, but if you just have a universe and there's no significant, important transactions between people, not transactions, but interactions, that's the word. Interactions between people, who cares about the universe you created?
That's true. That's a very good point. So what you're saying is there has to be a recipient to notice the chesed. That's what the Talmud said. It's forbidden to do chesed to someone who doesn't have das. What's a good example? You see, you can't do chesed on the universe. If you try and feed a goldfish more than it needs, you'll kill it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't water plant. I'm going to do a chesed with my plants. You'll kill them. You can't do chesed. Right? So it needs, chesed requires the recipient to have a need. So
It needs
God
a
can
vessel.
help. What's that?
It needs a vessel, you're saying.
Right. God, it requires Adam to need clothes, to recognize that he needs clothing. So you can recognize, if you try and give a chesed to someone who doesn't have any cognizance, you'll kill them. What's a great example of that? October the 7th.
I'm not following.
You see, the Jews thought we're doing such nice things for all these Arabs.
Oh, yeah.
And even though the Arabs widely recognize that Gaza Strip is a disaster, right? Which they know quite well that it was the Jews that helped them build it up. They gave them free water and electricity. They gave them supplies. They did everything. They bent over backwards to try and help them as much as they could. They employed them. You follow? And what did they do? It killed them. It just destroyed them. It ate them up. Because you have to have dust to give chesed to. They have no awareness.
What's das?
It's a hard word to translate, but it's understanding. They had no understanding.
Awareness.
Awareness. It destroyed them. They just couldn't handle it. When you try and give, and again, if you try and give more food to a fish, the world needed Adam to get to the point where he recognized he needed clothes. Then God can do chesed with him. God wants to do chesed with you, but you have to recognize the need. If you don't see your need, it does chesed for you. It'll destroy you.
Because then you'll be wanting more and more and more.
Well, you'll just abuse it. It's like giving children, giving young people tons of money, or making their life easier. You don't get anywhere. They have to recognize the need that you can help them. It's like you put, it's the classic story of the single mom who is doing a minimum wage job as a cashier, comes home, makes dinner, helps her daughter with her homework, and then does night classes. Why? To get an accounting degree so she can pay for her daughter to go to school. Right? This kid, right? This mother was a high school dropout.
Mm-hmm.
So how come she can take high-end classes when she's a single mom, and she couldn't do the basics when she was in high school? Because she didn't see a need. You can give her all you want, but if she doesn't see a need, it's not going to do anything. It's just they're going to feel like you're punishing me, sending me to school. I hate school.
So interesting what you're saying, because I haven't had like the ability and the energy to do a lot of work with my younger children, and they're always bothering me now to do work with them. And before it was like a struggle. So it's like, it's so strange.
Why is it strange?
It's strange because like I'm not able to, but now is why they want, like that's the reason that they want it. Like I don't know, it's very weird to me. Whereas before I was available and I had the ability and the energy and everything else, and it was a struggle. Like with one kid, I would have to argue with this kid for like 25 minutes just to get a 5 to 10 minute work done. And now it's like, oh, you never do work with me. I'm like,
right. That's an
it's
interesting.
strange.
Yeah. Right. That's an interesting. Right. Because children need to know you care. That's what they
Is that
really.
what the 25 minute of arguments was? Is like I
Yeah.
care to push you into getting this work
Right.
done.
For children to know that you care is very, very important. That's why that's one of that's the second question, parenting question. What's the worst thing you can ever say to your children?
Something about the worst thing ever. I'm trying to remember what you taught us.
Right. It's okay. It's
I
like
don't care.
oh, very good. Right, but worse than saying I don't care. How do you show that you don't care?
You give up on them.
You don't answer at all.
Oh, that's the reason. So I'm like, and that they're like, oh my gosh, she doesn't care. Now we have to force her to care.
Right. Right.
Oh my gosh, that's so
They want
funny.
to know you care. That's why kids push your buttons, because they want to know. For them, your caring is a thrill.
That's the reason they push our buttons, because that shows that we care.
Yeah, they want to know you care, because that's their lifeblood. It's our lifeblood. Knowing that God loves us is our lifeblood.
So if you're too tired, exhausted, and mentally deprived, and you can't even give it to your kids so that you don't even have buttons to push, then what?
Then what? What do you mean? Then what?
I don't have buttons to push because I'm so tired.
Yeah, for them, it's fun for them to try and figure it out.
Oh, so now it's like an obstacle course for them?
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
It's like I have a grandson, so he's the oldest in his particular family. So his joy in life, which I completely understand, being a boy, is to drive his sisters up a wall. Right? So the mother told me, is my daughter-in-law, told me that she told her daughter, when he does this, just ignore him. Right? So my granddaughter, being the smart cookie she says, it doesn't help, because when I ignore him, it just riles him on even more. Like, he now has a challenge. He just keeps going until he finally figures out. So it just gets worse. So I might as well just lose it now when it's not so bad, right? Then, right? Why? Because he gets a thrill. Like, it's not about, like, he doesn't care the punishment. It's like part of the thrill. It's like, why do you go on a roller coaster? Right? For me, I hate roller coasters. For me, going on rollers is a punishment. What did I do wrong? You're putting me on a roller coaster. But people love it. Like, why would I want to go on a thing that's going to make me think I'm going to die?
Or that's going to make a person sick.
Right. You understand? Because that's the thrill. So when you punish the kid, I nearly got away with it. Next time I'll get away with it. You know,
so your granddaughter can up the game and start becoming more devious and more and go after her brother. So then it'll be a better challenge for him.
That's right. And the parents punishing him doesn't help, because that's all part of the game.
It's the price to pay to enjoy the game.
That's right. I think Stevie Wonder had a song about that. You know, the thrill of like running away from dad when you got him mad. You know. But anyway, getting back. So there's more exciting stuff. This parsha is filled with concepts, great concepts like this. There's one of the most famous ones is in chapter 23, verse 19. And there it says the very famous line, right? Lo tevashel gidi b'chalav imo. Do not cook a goat, a kid, in its mother's milk. Right?
We've covered this before.
Oh, what did we say? Go ahead.
Isharim. I don't remember exactly, but it was something about how the mother provides milk, and then to go ahead and take her child and cook that milk, which was a chesed for you, is a cruelty.
Right. So the Mesilas Yesharim says that we learn the Rabbanims. See, we tend to think in Judaism, I'm losing my English here. Right? We tend to think in Judaism that the rabbi just sitting around trying to figure out what fences to put. Oh, let's make life difficult for the Jews, They like in America or England or any country, the government passes laws. Sometimes they're like inane, and now and again they pass something that makes sense, right? But there's an awful lot of times that they're just they're just passing laws. They're often not thinking about the consequences of them or whatever happens to be. That's not what Rabbanan is. That's not what it's about. And he gives the example of a Nazir. The Torah gives a very interesting concept in a Nazir. It says like this: the Nazir is not allowed to drink wine, but it adds that he's not allowed to eat grapes or any grape product. Now, there's a big gap between a grape and a wine, right? So clearly, the Torah is telling you that for the Nazir is the Torah itself is making a fence around wine. You're not allowed to drink wine, but to make sure you don't come to drink wine, right? Don't eat grapes. Grapes are not the issue. It's the wine that's the issue. But the Torah put in other words, if a Nazir was to accidentally eat a grape, okay, right? But if it was to drink wine, that's a big deal. Are you with me so far? So the Mesilas Yesharim says this is the paradigm for all D'Rabbanans. When it came to shatnez, you're not allowed to mix wool and linen. What about cotton and linen? Perfectly fine. What about polyester and linen? Perfectly fine. What about wool and plastic? Perfectly fine. What's forbidden? Wool and linen. Period. Beginning, middle, and end. There's no extras. There's no fences. There's no nothing. You follow? But when it comes to kashrut, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new game. There's a famous, I think it's of Chaim Kamenetsky. I forget, it might not be. I'm terrible in names, but they asked the question, when you look at Ezra, when Ezra came back at the destruction, to rebuild the Bais Sheni, 70 years from the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash to the second, to the rebuilding of the second, right? So nobody wanted to go back. The land was desolate. It was bandits. It was unsafe. Civilization was the Jews had made a home in Babylon. It was the New York of the New World. It was happening. It was money, finance, education, schools. They had everything there, right? And we're going to go back to the land of Israel. Like the only people who went were the fanatics, the Haredim. These were the people, right? So it's in the Navi. So it describes the scene where Ezra's going to all the people coming. You have to do something with your non-Jewish wives. Right? These aren't the secular. This isn't reform movement. This is the most religious Jews had married out.
That's incredible.
That's mind-boggling. I have heard of things like this, but I never met anybody that did this. Right? It's a very rare occurrence that a frum person keeping Shabbos, kashrut, going to shul 3 times a day, fasting on Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, and all the minor fast days, right? And he's got a non-Jewish wife with a black cat and kippah and the whole thing, and sits in tefillin in the morning. The kashrut is like, the duts. Right?
How did it even happen? That seems to be like something that would be almost impossible, because like as soon as the frum man were to marry a non-Jewish woman, doesn't all the stuff that he's been keeping start to get affected?
That's true. So you see, the answer is that's what the rabbis passed all these laws on kashrut. The reason today it couldn't happen, or would be very difficult, is because we live in a different world than they lived in. All the mitzvahs we have around the kitchen, in other words, if you were to keep the mitzvah of kashrut according to the Torah, our kitchens would be very different.
Much simpler, that's for sure.
Much simpler. Right. Excuse me a second. Hang on.
Sure.
Much simpler. Right? So we live in a world where kashrut, which is a different world. Right? You with me?
Yeah.
That's because the rabbis passed all these laws on kashrut. Where did they get the idea that you could do that? Don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. It was the Torah didn't say when it came to kashrut, like they said with shatnez. The Torah said with shatnez, don't mix wool and linen. When it came to kashrut, the Torah didn't say don't mix meat and milk. It said don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. It gave flavor. It gave context. It gave depth. It gave a visual. It was something there. So the rabbis understood from this that this is something that can be expanded upon. You can stretch it. It's like quality material. You can stretch it a little bit. When you have a cheap shirt or cheap jacket, there's not much you can do with it. But you have an expensive jacket, there's things you can let it out a little bit. There's things you can do with it, right? So the same thing they understood when it came to kashrut, meat and milk, there's room to expand. So that what the rabbanos, the mitzvahs that we have around kashrut today are not irrelevances. They're not just decrees that you have to follow. They give the Jewish home a flavor, a meaning, because they took this. The Torah gave you a mitzvah: don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, and by there implies that there's more. You can expand this mitzvah out, and they did. And therefore, the practice of kashrut that we have today creates an atmosphere of a Jewish home that's real. It's not just a decree that the rabbi said, wear a hat on Tuesday. It has a meaning to it, has a flavor to it, it brings meaning to your home. These things are not just irrelevances, not just decrees that we have to keep. And it's like, I wish we didn't have to do it, but we have to check. You can't have rice on Pesach, or Ashkenazim speaking that. Right? You can't. There's hummus and things that you do. These are not irrelevances. These make the home what it is. They're not. They didn't just come about.
Interesting.
Okay, very good. Okay, we got time for a little bit more. We'll do one last idea, which is a phenomenal idea. The base of Levi is right at the end of the Parsha. The Jewish people say this line, Na'aseh, very famous line, Na'aseh v'nishma. Chapter 24, verse 7, if you want to look it up.
So I feel like we've had this conversation before where we talked about how if you trusted God, that he's got your best interest in mind, then you'll do what he says. And this is basically what this verse is saying, right?
That's true. That's true. But the base of Levi makes a phenomenal point. The Torah is true. And the Torah is reporting what actually happened. And therefore, he says, it could not be that the Jewish people said, Na'aseh v'nishma. What they said, what?
Why not? Why can't it be that they said that?
Because, in other words, if I asked you, do you want pizza? Right? And you say, oh, I'd like pizza. And your husband turns around and says, I'd like pizza too. So I would report it, right? We want pizza, or they want pizza. But no one said, we want pizza. Each one said, I want pizza.
Yeah, but let's say, the family goes out and everybody wants pizza. And, my husband's going to be the one that says, we want pizza.
Right. But no one said, we want pizza. Each person said, I want pizza.
Oh, you're saying there's no one person that was like the leader that said, okay, we want. Okay. So it's weird for each individual to say we.
Right. What they said was, I will do and I will understand. So the Torah wrote it down. We will do and we will understand. Now they finish it, but no one said Na'aseh. Each person said, I'll say, I will do.
I always thought that they did say that. I always thought they did say we will as a group.
That's you're 100% right. So the Beis Halevi comes along and says, right, the Torah is emes. If the Torah said Na'aseh, that's exactly what they did. They did say we will do. So how could they say such a thing?
Because they knew what each person would say.
You see, Torah is not about what you're going to do. It's you're responsible for making sure the person you're sitting next to is going to do it too.
Yes.
How about Israel?
As part of Avos is 100%. Right? In other words, you're going to do what needs to be done to make sure your kids graduate or whatever it is. It's not a question of like they have free will, they can choose what they want. That's not on the game, right? I'm going to make sure that they're going to come to agree and understand whatever particular issues in life are important to you. You're going to make sure that they buy into it too. That's what the Jewish people said. That is Kabbalah Sator. That is what it means to accept the Torah. The Torah is not about I'm going to do it. The Torah is about we are going to do it.
But how can you really be responsible for another person? Because ultimately people make their own choices.
That's true, but in as much as everybody really wants to do the right thing and wants a better life, in other words, we just went through October 7th, the great wake-up call for the Jewish people. Now, there's still some idiots out there that think, what they think. But nevertheless, it's not just that the Jewish people have gotten a wake-up call. It's that the Jewish people also understand that they have to get everybody else to understand. They're approaching it from a very different point of view. They learned a very important lesson. Despite the Holocaust, they still fell into this trap of not believing it. After the Holocaust, everybody said, when someone stands up and says, we're going to kill you, believe them. Well, that's exactly what they did too. So the Jewish people have come to the realization that these slogans don't work. We have to. It's a new world order in the Jewish people. It's not the same. People think they're going to get all the hostages back and we're going to move on. It's going to go. No, it's not going to go back, because the Jewish people have realized we need a different model. Secular Zionism doesn't work. Secular education doesn't work. Commitments don't work. Education doesn't work. Studying history doesn't work. I was just listening to Douglas Murray. So he spoke to Harari, this guy who wrote *Sapiens*. I have struggled to find positive things to say about him or the book. But one of the things he says is that he's very secular, doesn't believe in Torah, and he's like, one of his themes was, we like to think as human beings that we're important. We're not important. We're just the outgrowth of evolution, all this kind of silliness.
Excuse me, maybe you're an outgrowth of evolution, but I'm not.
Exactly. So he said October the 7th is so profound, we don't have a book. We don't know how to deal with the future. In other words, it completely upended his whole entire worldview, and he doesn't know how to move on anymore. Right? So Douglas Murray, who says not Jewish, says he's making a big mistake, because we do have a book. Right? And this is Douglas Murray.
It's so funny coming from a non-Jew.
I know, it's hysterical. We do have a book. Right? We've been saying these things for thousands of years. Right? The Haggadah, we say it. Right? You just thought you had a different system that worked, and your system doesn't work. Right? It's a new world order. We're in a new day.
Is this arrogance or is this ignorance? I mean, what is it to say that we don't have a book? Are you for real? Like, the Bible is the most well-known thing. Like,
it's trauma. It's trauma. It's The whole world, everything, Yair Lapid, he said it beautifully. He says, we have to come to recognize the lies we've been telling ourselves.
I'm sick of trauma. Personally, I'm sick of trauma. Enough already.
It's true.
No, because you know what happens? Okay, we go through something traumatic. We say, that was too painful. I got to close up my heart. I can't feel because it was too much. And we keep doing this over and over and over again. And then we stop learning how to feel. Like we don't know how to feel because we don't want to feel. It's too painful. And so God has to push us to feel.
Right. So you know what the Hebrew word for trauma is?
It's probably something like sheker. I don't know.
You're close. Very good. The Hebrew word for trauma is das.
Das, knowledge, awareness?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because das is the wisdom you get from learning from your experience. It's traumatic. Now it can be, minor, like learning to ride a bicycle. How do you learn to ride a bicycle? You don't learn to ride a bicycle. You learn how not to ride a bicycle. You get on a bicycle, and all the things that you think of how to ride a bicycle don't work, and you slowly whistle it around. It's traumatic. That's why some people don't want to ride a bicycle, learn to or swim or anything like this, because it's traumatic. You have to face things that don't work. Right?
That's why we drink. Way to learn to ride a bicycle. It's called a balance bike. Makes it much easier, less trauma.
That's true. You can minimize the trauma. You can acclimate yourself into it, but it's nevertheless traumatic.
Okay.
So the counter of it is if you know the Almighty is on your side and He loves you. If you don't know that, then it's painful because you feel like you're falling off a high wire and there's no net.
Why is that such a difficult thing to incorporate in one's head? Because ever since, I don't know who taught it to me first, but ever since I heard that whole thing that Rabbi Noach Weinberg Zitzal would say, tell your kids that Hashem loves you. I've been practicing this, hey Zita, Hashem loves you, right? And in the beginning, it was very difficult. I couldn't understand why. It seemed so stupid that would be so difficult. It's mishugas that it's so difficult. What's so difficult to understand about this, right? But the more people I meet and the more I say to them, Hashem loves you, the immediate reaction is like, no, I don't think so. I still, I have to do more. I hope so. It's like a immediate reaction.
That's right.
We think are like have self-esteem, feel good about themselves, yada, yada, yada. As soon as you say to them, Hashem loves you, there's an immediate reaction of like,
that's
no.
right. It is the hardest thing to get. This is the purpose of creation. This is what our goal is. This is what Purim is all about, by the way. Why do we drink? Is to forget the trauma, the dust.
Are you saying that the experiences are so strong that, because it's mostly in the mind is what you're saying, if you have to drink and forget it.
That's right. It's all the mind, 100%. But you see, what was it like when you were a kid and you didn't have this trauma? That's what you're going back to. You're drinking so you forget it. So you can go back to what you used to be like.
And that's why some people drink, is because they want to forget the trauma. It's too much for them to handle.
Right.
And it's such a deep pain. So they drink, and the drugs and the this and the that. That's their method of dealing with that pain instead of feeling it and moving on.
That's right. Now, to the degree you know the Almighty loves you and it's all good, then you won't have the trauma and you don't need to drink. But in as much as we're living in the post-Gan Eden world, everybody has trauma.
Because of the initial trauma of being kicked out.
Well, it's not he had to be kicked out because he didn't think God loved him. It's not that he got kicked out because, and therefore God doesn't love him. He couldn't be, you can't be in the Garden of Eden. At a certain point, your kid, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, can't live in the Garden of Eden anymore because they get resentful. Why are you doing this to me? So as soon as you cross into that path, they're no longer in the Garden of Eden.
And then the trauma begins.
That's the trauma is the thing that makes you leave the Garden of Eden. Why is God doing this to me? I hope we'll talk about more about this when Purim comes up. It's not long.
What about
Thanks, guys.
Rabbi? What about the beginning and the end of the parasha?
Oh, very good. Yes, this is a tough one, right?
Yeah, he gave them laws.
What's that? Yeah, I don't. I'll be honest. I don't have a very good beginning and end here, right? Except to say, I mean, there's the obvious one, which is what Rashi brings, that why are these mitzvahs here just like they were, because they were given on Har Sinai. They're connected to that. And the end of the parsha is Moshe going up to get the mitzvahs, to get the Torah.
This whole thing with the Jewish bondsman and the end actually does, in my opinion, have a connection, because it talks about the Jewish bondsman who wants to stay with his master,
Right.
and basically the Jewish people are accepting God as their master.
Right. That's right. So there's a lot of connections here, right? There's a beautiful Rashi that he says these are the mitzvahs that you should put in front of them, right? So he says it's not enough to tell people the mitzvah. You gotta wait 6 hours between meat and milk, right? It's not enough to drive them crazy. It's not enough to drill them so they got it down, right? You have to speak to them until they understand the meaning of it. They got to get the whole thing, right? In other words, you have to get to the point where there's no trauma. So it's a natural expression. They would obviously want to do it, right? Once you understand buy low and sell high, you don't have to. It's easy. It's like, if I give you the choice between a lollipop or $1,000, which one are you going to pick?
$1,000 any day.
Right, but what if you're 4 years old?
Probably the stupid lollipop, unless I've brainwashed them enough to tell them that it's basically poison.
Right.
It tastes great.
Right, that's true. That's a good idea. But nevertheless, they're going to go, I really want the lollipop. Right, to get them to the point where they really want the $1,000, that's an education. That's what it says. You have to put the mitzvahs in front of them, not like a Shulchan Aruch, like a set table. That's where the Shulchan Aruch gets this name from, right? It has to be like you're sitting at a table and everything fits and it's beautiful and the cutlery is out, and the dishes are out, and the food looks good. Food is not enough that food be tasty or nutritious or filling. It has to look good too. There is a reality that food has to look appetizing. That's what mitzvahs have to do. That's what halakha, that's what Torah has to be. We unfortunately don't necessarily do that, but that's what we have to get to. When you do that, you don't have any trauma. Because if you're telling someone if you're teaching children to do mitzvahs and they don't like doing them, they don't get anything from it. It doesn't work for them. They're in a constant state of trauma. And eventually, you'll have something. It will break. It won't work.
So if you yourself don't see it as enjoyable, there's no way you can teach them to enjoy it.
That's true too. Right. That's true too.
Maybe this is the reason that some foods are not as interesting to my kids anymore, because I have no interest for it either. It's been something of a curiosity, but this makes sense.
Good.
And maybe that's why it says in the Shema, Vishinantam, and you shall teach your children well.
Right.
That's what it really means.
Right. Right.
Very interesting. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Have a great Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom.
Rabbi.
Thanks. Take care. Good night.
All the best. Good night. Good night.